last thing we need are new areas of uncertainty, instability and division.
Bad for Scotland, bad for the people of Scotland, bad for business in Scotland.
When the solid world of everyday reality disintegrates and the whole population is driven by fear towards insanity.
I'm afraid!
Don't be afraid!
No, be afraid. Be very afraid.
At their 2013 party conference, Scottish Labour had clearly decided it was time to step up their game on the referendum debate.
All political parties have a responsibility to give you an honest debate. You must be told the truth because you deserve nothing less.
Yes, aside from the obvious implication that their opponents are liars and everything from the euro to the price of a pie supper, the Truth Team initiative, like every move by the No campaign, is about stopping the debate from being interesting or engaging.
Someone in Glasgow is no different from someone in London or in Cardiff, and I think it's really important that we remember that.
In a similar vein, they claimed, and presumably still do, that Scotland was on pause, stuck in some strange pre-plebiscite quagmire.
For what we have now is Scotland on pause.
With the people in Scotland crying out for facts on the nation's future, the Unionist camp has become preoccupied with smearing their opponents. And that's why a ludicrous amount of their time has been spent casting pro-independence campaigners as intolerant.
I absolutely make no apology, said Alex Salmond's ministerial aide, for saying that the Liberal Democrats, Labour and the Tories are anti-Scottish. I would ask Nicola this evening not to question the patriotism of the millions of Scots who stand tall within the United Kingdom.
The thing that sparked all of this off, though, and ultimately culminated in this hammy performance from MP Douglas Alexander on Question Time, was far from what it seemed. This is MSP and multi-award-winning journalist Joan McAlpine. In January of 2012, following suggestions from the Westminster government of a possible intervention on the timing and general setup of the independence referendum, she said this.
I absolutely make no apology for saying that the Liberals, the Labour Party and the Tories are anti-Scottish and coming together to defy the will of the Scottish people, the democratic mandate that the Scottish people gave us to hold the referendum at a time of our choosing.
So just to recap, what she said was, basically, it's disrespectful to Scottish democracy to try to stop its parliament from holding the referendum at a time of its choosing.
The UK government were going to force the pace in a referendum. They were going to say it has to be held within an 18-month period. Then they declared a referendum organised by this parliament was illegal.
Granted, whilst the phrase anti-Scottish is perfectly appropriate, it was a bit of a gift to those politicians and media hacks only too happy to lift it out of context. Which of course they did, and after a few days the quote had grown arms and legs. Anyone who disagreed with independence was apparently anti-Scottish.
I do not question the patriotism of those who believe our nation would be better by withdrawing from the United Kingdom.
People were understandably outraged.
People who are Scottish being labelled as anti-Scottish if they don't vote SNP, I think it's terrible.
That is an utter disgrace.
Of course, by now it didn't matter that she was talking specifically about the coalition government's threats to undermine the Scottish Parliament on the date of a referendum. By now the media had warped the original story into something completely different. Sure, the original comments are still available, and anyone can listen to them for themselves, but let's be honest, who's seriously going to wade through over an hour of dry parliamentary debate from almost 2 years ago?
Order!
A remarkably similar episode occurred after Newsnight Scotland's Gordon Brewer suggested that the SNP's Nicola Sturgeon had described opponents of independence as crazy.
Think about the implications of what you're saying. You've just effectively described the majority of people in Scotland who don't agree with your nationalist outlook as crazy. That's not a very good way.
Here's what she actually said.
If you were having this debate in any other country in the world, they would think you were crazy because it's the independence that other countries take for granted.
Never once to let reality get in the way of a good smear, the No campaign hurriedly published this on their doom-laden Facebook page. You see, for undecided voters, creating the idea that the biggest pro-independence party views them as unpatriotic or anti-Scottish heightens the level of emotion and brings an entirely unwanted nationalistic ethnic element to the debate.
And I don't like being called unpatriotic for asking tough questions.
I'm very patriotic, and it's because I'm patriotic that I don't want independence.
The SNP itself becomes something to fear, a threat to normal, rational Scots who haven't made their mind up yet.
I think there are voices in this debate which are so harsh, are so denigrating, they're silencing some people.
Of course, what such assertions miss is a somewhat obvious fact that it's in the interests of the Yes campaign to be as happy, cosy and universal as possible. In fact, you might even argue that Yes Scotland are too nice, but then they can't really afford not to be. By the same token, of course, it's in the interests of the No campaign to present the debate and the lead up to the referendum as divisive, dangerous and high risk.
Whether, financially I'm going to be secure for the rest of my days, that does frighten me.
The Nationalists constantly tell us that everything's going to be okay. They've deceived us before, how can we trust them?
Now if you're concerned about Scotland's future, about our currency, about mortgages, savings, pensions, then why not join us?
How to say no? Yes, sometimes just plain no is best.
Because when all's said and done, they don't actually have to present a case to win a no vote. Just make the debate itself seem so off-putting that people wouldn't even want to engage with it, and that way people won't even end up having to consider the arguments. The problem is that the opponents of independence have never wanted to have this debate. They see it as irrelevant. They always have.
We can't be two nations.
And so their only role is to try to discredit any case put forward in the name of Scottish independence. Seems obvious when you think about it. And it explains how mind-boggling offensive stuff like this can end up getting printed in a national newspaper. Opponents of independence want to steer the debate towards assertions and innuendo, and their favourite talking points are unanswered questions.
There are too many unanswered questions in the debate over Scottish independence.
Unanswered questions.
There are lots and lots of questions.
There are quite a few unanswered questions.
The much ballyhooed unanswered questions consist of a veritable catalogue of variations on a single theme. Questions whose answers lie in how cantankerously a rump UK government might negotiate the return of Scotland's sovereignty. Will Westminster try to make it difficult for us to continue EU membership? Will they try to make it difficult for us to continue using sterling? Will they respect the UK's maritime boundaries or try to hold on to North Sea oil? Questions that can only be answered by the UK government, and they've made it very clear that they're keeping that kind of thing very close to their chests.
Of course we will work with the Scottish Government in providing information, but let me be clear about what we won't do. We will not pre-negotiate Scotland's exit from the United Kingdom.
The No campaign are perfectly aware of this, and that's why they stick pretty much exclusively to questions for which they're sure there's no definitive answers. Ironically, of course, Yes Scotland is practically a question-answering machine. Spend more than 5 seconds on their website and you'll see that if there's one thing you can't accuse the Yes campaign of, it's unanswered questions. But the picture most Scots get is remarkably similar to that presented by the official No campaign. Rather than debating the pros and cons of an independent Scotland, all too often the conversation is about minute, unknowable details, and they'd have you believe that the entire independence movement was a hostile takeover by a single political party at the behest of a megalomaniacal dictator whose Bute House is to Scotland what Minas Morgul is to Middle-earth.
We have a majority SNP government in the Scottish Parliament. That is not a democratic place in the conventional sense. It is a dictatorship of one man sitting in Bute House who will do what not is what in Scotland's interest, but is what in his own or his party interest.
Making people frightened isn't solely the job of politicians though. They're aided and abetted by an ever-eager media, constantly watching for gripping coverage.